Welcome to Lift Talk, where we talk about lifting. This is episode 6, and I was lucky enough to be joined by Valentina Duong, and we spoke about flexible dieting and the drawbacks and positives, as well as some potential options if you don't want to track macros so strictly. We also had a really good discussion about body image, about weight classes, and about plenty of other things to do with performance nutrition. Enjoy the episode. Val, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks for waiting because I was late in traffic,
That's okay. You got here in one piece. That's what matters.
But you told me yesterday, don't speed.
Yes.
So I deliberately drove as I imagined that you would drive.
Oh, amazing.
And
So
that meant that I was 10 minutes late.
did you hit the curb hard enough that your wheel popped, or because if you're going to go all the way, I would like you to go all the way.
Lean all the way into it. Okay, cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
So obviously you are the strength dietitian.
Yes.
And we're going to get into some nutrition stuff very soon. But I want to know sort of the origin story behind Valentina. What was your first interaction with physical culture and how did that develop into a love for lifting?
Yeah, so I think I started back in high school, like most people do. And I started it when I was doing my HSC because I was really stressed and I needed an outlet. So I went to the gym and somehow made friends, which was nice. And I just followed people around the gym doing what they did, which is quite a dodgy way of doing things. And you would be so upset to know that the way, like one of our workouts was that we would do dumbbell flat bench, dumbbell incline bench, dumbbell flies, and then we would do barbell flat bench, barbell incline bench, and then we would do machine flies.
That sounds like pretty much every bro's Monday afternoon session.
Pretty much. And, it created me into the bro that I am today. And
so that was the love for bench. That's how the love for bench
That's
started.
how the love of bench. Actually, I think the love of bench is like, I used to do swimming and they would make us do push-ups before we swam. And I loved those push-ups.
So you had a bit of a leg up on everyone else who hadn't been doing push-ups. So how did that sort of just screwing around in the gym turn into, I want to do powerlifting?
Okay, so I loved progressing. I loved feeling strong. It was like the only time when I wasn't stressed was when I was at the gym, really, at that time in my life. And my mates who I was following around the gym, they kept going, I'm going to do a powerlifting comp. I'm going to do a powerlifting comp. And I was like, yay, I want to do one with you. They still haven't done a powerlifting comp, just by the way. it's time. And I was like, screw it. And when I started going to the University of Sydney, I looked for powerlifting gyms to join. And I almost joined Lift. Almost, because it's really close to Redfern. But I decided on City Strength. I went there that first time to like check it out. And I fell in love.
What year was that?
Couldn't even tell you.
Like 2017, around there?
I started 6 years ago. So yeah, 2017.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
so you've been basically with City Strength since the gym opened and with John the whole time?
With John the whole time. I haven't
that's
swapped coaches at all.
Some loyalty there. That's a call out to everyone out there who's had fucking 17 coaches in 3 years. Stop switching coaches.
I think when you have a brilliant coach, which I do, like John is incredible at what he does. Why would you change?
Okay, that's enough That's enough sucking up to John. Okay, so let's get onto the nutrition topic. So I hired you midway through last year to help me with my nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
And the big reason was because I wanted to get away from tracking macros. As powerlifters, and this is kind of a trait of many powerlifters, they love to be in control of stuff.
Absolutely.
They love to track their sets and reps, their RPEs, even bar velocity. And this kind of goes into the nutrition realm as well. They love to be in control of protein grams and blah, 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 sort of in the hope that they're going to be able to then control their performance. They're going to be able to have better control over their body weight as well. Before we talk about potential other options other than tracking macros, what are some of the benefits or strengths of that kind of a system?
I think there are definitely many strengths to tracking macros. So there's that education piece. You learn what's in a piece of food. You learn the protein and the carbs and the fats and the fiber, sometimes even the water content, right? You get a better understanding of food from that perspective. And you also get data. And data is really important. If you are doing, for example, an acute weight cut in the lead up to comp, that data from both a body weight perspective and a macros and calories perspective is much easier for me as a dietitian to see, and for you as a client to visualize as well. And the more data you have, the better you can predict the outcome. So I think those are two really big strengths. And I also think, like you said, there's this aspect of control, which I think is a blurry line. It can be positive and it can be negative. For some people, being able to see and quantify the numbers in the macros and calories is actually really helpful for them. And it keeps them accountable. And for other people, that it is either a slow descent or a very fast spiral into disordered eating.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
So you mentioned that this kind of approach would suit some people and wouldn't suit other people.
Absolutely.
What kind of people would it actually suit?
Yeah. I think it would suit people with a good relationship to food and people who are beginners, because I think there are some people who have been in the game for a really long time, like for yourself, who can roughly track macros without really having to weigh every single gram. But some people, unlike you, continue to do that 10 years on, and their entire life is still about weighing everything and then bringing their meal preps to eat out with their friends, right? So I think people who are newer to the game and really just trying to learn, and they don't have that history of aggressive dieting.
Mm-hmm. So how would you kind of identify whether someone would suit this approach or not?
Yeah, I think there's definitely more structured ways to kind of check if someone has disordered eating or an eating disorder. But I guess the way my approach is really to sit down and have a chat with them. When you've had enough chats around that topic, you can see all the red flags. When someone says to me, oh yeah, but I ate that brownie and it was so bad. Like I hate that I did that. I felt so guilty. I had to go for a run afterwards. Like when you hear language like that, even if it's a lot more subtle than that, like they'll say, oh, it was really good this weekend. I only had X for breakfast. When you hear that language, it kind of like sends off signals, I think.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what are then some of the drawbacks? You kind of alluded to some of them there. What are some of the drawbacks for getting stuck into, tracking so strictly?
I think it can be so isolating. You can miss out on so much connection and friendship and joy when you are hitting your macros your entire life, right? And at that point, you need to reevaluate, is that trade-off worth it anymore? I also think that it can distract from pursuing health and pursuing nutrition, in the sense that macros and calories are absolutely important, but they are one piece of it, right? Tracking calories and macros tells you what's in a food and what you're putting in your body. But we also need other data points like meal timing, diet quality. How does this food feel in your body? Does it sustain you? Like I can see your Monster there, which is classic powerlifting.
Delicious.
No sugar Monster. And someone who is tracking calories may have a Monster with a Pop-Tart and be like, cool, 200 calories, sweet, I've got X amount of calories left for the day. I feel really energetic right now. And then they'll get to the evening and they're binging at night and they're like, I have no willpower, I have no control. And it's like, no, your diet quality sucks and you're hungry.
Yeah, you're hungry because you haven't filled yourself with any actual nutrition yet.
Exactly.
So other than the actual nutrition part of it, what can food give to people sort of socially and from a mental health perspective that isn't included in stuff that you can actually track?
Yeah, I think it can bring so much joy in terms of pleasure. Food should be pleasurable. And I think, every bite doesn't have to be perfect, but it's meant to bring you joy. I think there's connection when we're cooking with our family and our friends. It's how we may show love, or especially for me, like connect to my culture and to my heritage. Being able to cook with my mum and eat her food is so, so important to me. And I think for a lot of other people as well, you can't really track those things. You can't track, the date nights you're having or the late night ice cream runs with friends. You can't track, you could track the lollies in the gym that you have. But, it's really about like, one of the key things that I ask people to kind of see how their relationship with food is I'll say, if your friend rang your doorbell today and they had baked you a beautiful batch of your favorite baked goods, so cookies or brownies or pastries, how would you feel, right? So for you, how would you feel if someone had given you that?
I would be very happy and I would eat them.
Yeah, you'd be so excited. But for some people, especially when you're struggling with your relationship with food, there's this panic that comes in, and there's this guilt that hits where you're like, oh, it's so nice, but I feel so angry that they're doing it, and now I feel like a bad person because I feel angry and they did a nice thing for me, and it's not your fault for feeling that way, but it is a big indicator that your relationship with food still needs work.
And there's also the experience part of meals and, you know, going out, like you mentioned with going out for ice cream.
Yeah.
Like you can go on a date night and, you know, have an experience that is centered around food that there's no way you're going to be able to track something like that. And if you follow a tracking method or approach, you're missing out on these type of experiences.
Yeah.
And I think that's like such a huge part of nutrition as a whole, and being comfortable like with being able to make those kind of decisions to say like, okay, this probably isn't the best decision for maybe my training or my recovery or my calorie intake, whatever, the things that powerlifters would tend to think about. But it is a better decision for my social health and my relationship and, you know, an experience that I'm going to take away from.
Yeah.
And I think, you just miss out on that with a really, really strict approach.
I agree. And I think that like sometimes we try and have the best of both worlds, and we're like, I'll just loosely track this, which is fine. But what happens is you may like skip meals in the lead up so that you have room in calories for that. But you spend all that time like figuring out, is this too much? Is this enough? And there's so much food noise in your brain that you miss out. Like you're not actually present for that moment. You're not connected.
So let's actually ask for some advice here. If someone was following a tracking approach, let's say they were like, you know, reasonably far out from comp, so they don't have to worry about making weight or anything. And they were interested in, you know, continually tracking to ensure that their body weight stays in the right place, and ensuring that they're fueling their performance. And they did have a meal like that.
Yeah.
What would you suggest that they do on that day in the lead up to that experience?
Absolutely. I would continue to have regular meals. I would, let's say you're going out for dinner and you want a little bit more in your calorie budget for dinner. That's fine. Still have breakfast and lunch. They may be slightly less energy dense than what you're normally having. You may be pulling out your snacks in the lead up, or you may be just having lighter snacks in the lead up. But what we don't want to do is skip a full meal, because you will be starving and you will overeat on a food that is more energy dense, right? So continue to have nutritious food. Maybe you know that when you're eating out, you're probably not eating enough veggies. So you may be pushing in enough protein and veggies earlier on in the day and having a little bit more carbs and fats at the end of the day.
Would you ever recommend just having a free meal and like just eating normally throughout the day and then just allowing that meal to be what it is?
Absolutely. What I don't want is to call it a cheat meal and frame it in a way that makes it bad. But I also, I think of it as, I don't see any reason why every meal can't be a meal that you enjoy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Except if you're like me and you hate vegetables and you're like forced to eat them.
You eat your spinach and mushrooms on almost a daily now, don't you?
I do.
And you kind of like them?
Yeah. I've found enough options where it's like passable.
Yeah.
But I certainly wouldn't say that I'm in an abundance of micronutrients every day.
I think that you've found a good middle ground. And I also think that like everyone cooks veggies in a different way. And like your approach is like very like a singular option. Like you're very much like, I'll either eat it raw or you'll like stir fry it.
Yep.
And we can do things like we can add dressings, we can add cheese on top, we can roast, we can, you know, put some oil on it. Like
let's not turn this into a roast Alex show, because this is
options are limitless.
This is actually my podcast, if you weren't aware.
Oh, is it?
Chris is taking notes for the Instagram clips later.
Yeah, and just for people who are watching this, you know, Alex was almost not the host of this podcast. And today, I guess we're letting him be the host.
Well, I actually asked you if you wanted to do the intro, and you're like, no, it's okay, you do it.
I didn't want to hurt your feelings. You know,
Okay,
I know how important that intro is to you.
All right, so I think we've covered the sort of positives and negatives of tracking or a tracking approach.
Yeah.
What are some other options for people who probably already have good nutrition literacy,
Yep.
who are ready to step into a more of a meal structure type of approach where they can kind of plan their days out without having to weigh everything.
Yeah. I think it's um like at least my approach to things is there's obviously like there's tracking, there's intuitive eating, and you can kind of go to the extremes of both. I think both have extremes. Like for example, like we've already talked about the extremes of tracking, but the extremes of intuitive eating is like any pursuit for fat loss is bad and you should never try and lose weight or try and change your body composition, right? And I sit somewhere in that middle ground of can we take some principles of intuitive eating not to lose weight, but to improve health, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can we tune into our hunger and fullness cues? Can we also pair that with some gentle nutrition strategies around, having adequate protein for recovery, having adequate calories again for performance and recovery? So I think it's a combination approach that I take rather than some like a specific, approach.
So what does that actually look
Mm.
like then?
Yeah.
From you're building out someone's diet.
Yeah.
How do you start that? I mean, what you did with me was you were like, give me a meal, sort of a example of a day of eating, and then we went through like some potential options for meals. What does that look? Yeah, how do you go through that? Talk everyone through that process.
So I think you're probably not a great example in the sense that sorry, I didn't mean to, not like that, but you're not a great example in the sense that you actually have quite a good relationship with food. So there's less work that needs to be done in terms of like improving your relationship with food. So for you, it's very very logical, right? It was very much like okay. Let's do diet quality. We need more micronutrients in your diet. We still do. We need to ensure that you're hitting enough protein. We need to ensure that your timing around training has adequate carbs. We need a pre-training meal. We need a post-training meal. We need to include your intra-workout meal and the caffeine that comes into play. So I think for you, when I was doing your kind of nutrition, it was very, very logical. Whereas if I'm doing nutrition for someone with a more complex relationship with food, I'm considering things like what areas are really scary for them, right? So for someone that may be avoiding carbs, it is how do we pull this in a way that is not absolutely terrifying for you and jumping in the deep end, but we're still getting you to move closer to a nutritious diet.
Yeah, gentle integration, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So I think it's very individualized, but the classic principles of performance nutrition applies across the board if you are a strength athlete.
So it almost sounds like, you sort of like try to gradually get someone's diet to where you want to go.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some examples of that then. Like,
Yeah.
if someone is fearful of eating carbohydrates, how do you then get them to start to work them into their diet?
Yeah. Can I ask a clarifying question? Is it someone who is just a little bit fearful of carbs, like they just think, oh yeah, I probably shouldn't have more than 2 slices of bread at a meal? Or is it someone with, quite further along in the eating disorder
Probably
journey?
more towards the latter.
Okay.
But as I'm sure there is a spectrum here, but
Yeah.
I'm talking from a more like general perspective. Someone who's probably like, try to cut out carbs or at least stay quite low carb all the time. Like, how do you sort of get them to introduce that?
Yeah. So I think we start with an education piece. We start with what are carbs? Why are carbs so important? How are they affecting your brain? How are they affecting your performance? How are they affecting your health? And really tying that into what's most important for them. And for a lot of people, it is that performance focus where they want to be really strong at the gym. They want to be really fit and they want to run a certain distance. And carbs are essential for that. They're our body's main source of fuel. And so getting someone to understand that, getting someone to test it out. So I may say, I want you to try and have a muesli bar before your run. Or I want you to try and have 2 slices of toast instead of 1, and then tell me how that session felt, right? And then because they get a positive outcome, they're more likely to continue to include that.
What about from a like fear of the scale perspective? Like, obviously, actually, let's just talk about like actually weighing yourself and stuff. Where do you stand on the like how important it is for certain people to actually weigh themselves?
Yeah, I think it's a spectrum, and you could fall anywhere on that spectrum. So some of my clients don't weigh themselves at all. It doesn't provide them with any valuable data. It's just a number and it's not helpful for them. So they don't weigh themselves. Some of my clients on the other end of the spectrum weigh themselves daily, take that weekly average, and then we look at those trend lines over time. And then there are some that, you know, kind of want to monitor their weight, and they're learning how to not let that scale control them. And they may be doing something anywhere between 3 times a week to once a fortnight of weighing themselves. Yeah.
So I guess because this is a powerlifting podcast specifically,
Yeah,
we obviously compete in weight classes, so we have to be aware of what we weigh.
absolutely.
How do you get people aware of what they weigh without having full control over checking the scale all the time?
In terms of like, if they are having to be in a weight class, then they should be weighing themselves. We're not going off, you know, this is how your clothes are fitting, because that could just be bloating and that doesn't actually give us that much valuable data. So I get them to weigh themselves.
I guess I
yeah.
guess my question is kind of more like relating around, you know, not getting people so concerned about being a particular weight class or whatever like that.
Yeah. That's a discussion to be had. That's a discussion to be had, because I may have that discussion with someone where I may say, I think you might want to consider going up a weight class, and they'll bring their coach into that conversation as well, if that's also something they're open to. It may be that I bring that up in conversation and they shut me down immediately, and I may bring it up again, you know, a little further down the line. It really depends how receptive that person is to it. I will always be honest with my clients, and I will always say, you know, this is my recommendation, and I'll let them tell me how they think and how they feel about it. Because for some people, going up a weight class is terrifying, right? I don't know about you, but I was terrified to go up a weight class. I thought I'd be less competitive moving up a weight class, and it was the best choice I've ever made.
Yeah, it's rare that you see people go up a weight class and, first of all, don't improve their performance a lot. Second of all, within usually a year or two, are just as competitive as they were down.
Yeah.
But also the quality of their training is improved.
Yes.
The predictability of their training is greatly improved because they're fueled all the time.
Absolutely.
Their training is often reflective of their competition in a much better way.
Yeah.
Someone who's cutting they're taking more risks around what their performance is going to be like on comp day.
Yeah.
But also it seems like everyone just has a way better time.
Oh, 100%. 100%. And I think people also forget that, like, when you are cutting, number one, like, your mental health can sometimes suck. Like, you know, you're tired, you're grumpy. It depends how aggressively you're cutting, right? But if you're aggressively cutting, you feel like crap. That's obviously reflected in your training sessions. But also, I've seen people's leverages change drastically when they drop weight really rapidly. And that's really frustrating, because they get to comp and they're like, I feel like I can't squat anymore.
Yeah, squats seem to be the one that are affected the most, but also because they're first, you haven't had that time to rehydrate from the cut. Anyway, but that's a discussion for another day. Okay, so how would we get someone from a very rigid tracking approach into a less sort of structured, less strict approach in terms of nutrition? How do we make that transition?
Like, it depends on how motivated the client is. So they may want to go from tracking to not tracking. Most people don't do that. Normally what I would recommend is you go from tracking really strictly to tracking loosely, right? So it may be tracking just the main energy dense components, and then it may be just guesstimating and not weighing, maybe tracking less days per week, right? And tracking, you know, 1 day on a weekday and 1 day on the weekend. I'm always hesitant to be like, just don't track your weekends, because that's when people, like, you know,
that's when cheat days
that's
happen.
yeah, that's when, you know, that approach I think can get quite disordered. But I think 1 weekday and 1 weekend day is enough data for you to feel comfortable that you are, you know, eating an appropriate amount as well, and then you can slowly drop that off over time.
Yeah. So coming back to what I was saying at the start with powerlifters loving to have control, this kind of approach would be scary for people who have that type of a mindset where they want to track every variable.
Yeah.
And I feel like some people would struggle with the idea that they would have less control over how fueled they are for training, less control over what their body weight is going to do and the fluctuations and stuff like this.
Yeah.
How do you get someone sort of on board despite these potential drawbacks?
I think
how would you counter that thought process?
here's the thing. I wouldn't counter the thought process. It's very valid. You'll have less control. And it is scary. It's terrifying. You feel really vulnerable. And I think those are all very real feelings, and we need to let them sit in that, right? Losing control is really scary, but having a strong why is more important to get you through that. So if someone is, you know, the fear is very rarely will I be fueled for training, and the fear is often how much weight will I gain, right? And what does that mean about me, right? And I think we talk about where this fear of weight gain comes from, and it's very different for a lot of people. But the reason I see most often come up is I'm scared that I won't be accepted, that I won't be seen, I'll be ostracized, right? And that is so real. It is so, so real, because I know this is a bigger discussion, but we are in a society that is ingrained with fat phobia and diet culture and racism. So for a lot of people who show up in the world, they aren't accepted for who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And dieting and changing their body is a way of making them feel like they have control over that.
Making them fit in as well.
Making them, sorry?
Fit in as well.
Yeah, feel like they fit in.
Particularly in a sport like powerlifting where,
Mm.
how you look isn't the actual or be all and end all.
Yeah.
But it is, common for the best lifters to look amazing because, they're maximizing the amount of muscle mass they have to fit into their weight class. So I feel like that's also at play here as well, like trying to fit in with, the elites and be one of the elites.
Absolutely. And a lot of people who do powerlifting are also powerlifting coaches, or personal trainers, or nutritionists, or or dietitians, like people in the health and fitness industry, where our bodies are treated like business cards. As much as we don't want them to be, people often look at our bodies and judge us for them.
Mm-hmm.
And what I say when that comes up for some of the coaches that I work with is, do you want a client who's going to judge you for your body? Do you really want to work with someone who will only work with you if you have six-pack abs? Is that your ideal client? Is that the client that's going to bring you the most joy and fulfillment in your work?
And is that someone who's going to stay around for a long time?
Well, yeah.
I think that's a good segue into the next topic, which was on body image.
Yeah.
And I think, like I kind of alluded to there, powerlifting is great for certain people who have issues with body image, because we aren't judged by how our body looks. We are judged by what our body can do and how our body performs. I know that I've had issues with body image since, actually probably since I was like 14. And I know that you have as well. So I wanted to kind of dive into your history with that and like where that started for you, and we can kind of go back and forth around our own stories.
Okay.
And we can get the tissues ready for some tears.
Absolutely. Man, I didn't know we were diving into this. Okay. I think a very similar age for me. I was probably around 14, and I think we often think of disordered eating or eating disorders as a disease of vanity, and I fully disagree with that. I think it's very rarely about vanity and very often about, like I said, feeling accepted, feeling in control. And for me, when I was younger, as a person who, was in a really scary world, I'm quite an anxious person, being able to control my body kept me safe, kept me secure, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even if it didn't actually do it, it made me feel that way. So both, I think the restriction and the consumption of food helped me feel safe.
What were some early memories you have of, I can share mine as well. I'll actually share mine first. But what were some early memories you have of being unhappy with what you look like? Because I'll go first. I remember my first year of rugby.
Yeah.
I was in year 6, so I was 12. And I remember having this jersey that was like quite big on me.
Yeah.
And I couldn't pull it down my ass.
Yeah.
And like this is before I ever started lifting. And like I have a dump truck now.
Yeah.
And like I even had one before I'd even started training.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
And I remember looking in the mirror one day before I had a shower, and it was like sticking out, which most people would like. And I was like really self-conscious about it. So I was trying to pull my jersey over it to cover it up.
Oh, that would have been really hard.
Do you have any memories like that from, younger years where you were sort of unhappy with how you looked or struggling to come to terms with your own image?
So it's hard because for me, I think, like I said, like for me, it was really about control and less about what my body looked like. Although I did develop the body dissatisfaction over time. So I think the more that the more control I exerted over my body, the more dissatisfied I became. Because I didn't start all that restriction because I don't like my body, if that makes sense. Um, like yeah, I think I was probably struggling a lot with mental health and depression and anxiety at that time. And I was just coping the only way I knew how to cope. Um, and then over time, I was like, oh, I don't like a lot of people will say, like, I don't like the way my stomach looks. I felt like I was always sucking in. I was always trying to hide my body.
At what age was this?
Probably again around that 13, 14
Okay,
mark
yeah.
for me. Yeah.
And did you do anything about it at a young age?
Mm.
Like, did you just like subconsciously restrict food, or did you start to do ab training because you wanted your abs to look better? Like, did you do stuff like that? Because that's pretty common.
I definitely restricted food. Yeah. But it's hard because, like I said, it was a really blurry line for me from like how much of it was being really, really depressed at that time in my life versus trying to change my body. I still, even now in hindsight, struggle to quantify that. Yeah.
So, what are some of the telltale signs that potentially a client of yours might be dealing with some body image issues? Like, what are some of the red flags that come up in your head when you have a conversation with someone?
It is, so we'll start with actually exercise first. It's that compulsion around exercise. It is that if I miss a gym session, I feel guilty. I have to make it up. If I don't hit my step goal, then I'm a bad person. And then it's compensatory behaviors. So it is, if I didn't do X, then now I have to exercise in this way. So if if I did do X, so if I ate this, then I have to exercise like this, right?
Yeah. And
So-
I think we, like, sorry to interrupt,
Yeah.
but I think we had this prevalence of this sort of flexible dieting and tracking steps in the culture for a long time,
Yeah.
where if you overate by 20 grams of carbs on Monday, you would then, the coach would tell you, hey, just undereat by 20 grams of carbs on Tuesday and it'll even it out. If you do only 8,000 steps on Monday, do 12,000 steps to get your 10,000 average on your Tuesday. That is so disordered.
So messed
and
up.
like,
Yeah.
you know, I'm guilty of prescribing people that like 5-6 years ago.
Yeah.
But looking back, it's terrible.
You know, you only
You only know what you know.
you only know what you know.
You're only
Exactly.
Doing, you're only doing the best
that you can.
that you can with the current knowledge, the current tools that
Exactly.
you've got. Yeah.
And I think I really appreciate that you're able to say, oh, I did it this way and now I've changed my mindset on that. I think that's so important as a coach. But yes, I agree. Like, I think that's really fucked up that, you know, we told people you need to do X and it's still there. Like, it's maybe more subtle, but people will still tell me I need to hit 15K steps a day, right? If I have a day where it's less than that, I have to make up for it.
I remember training at Paragon
Yeah.
a few years ago, and there would often be a couple of people doing laps of the car park
Oh my God.
between their sets to get their step count up.
Mm.
And I remember thinking, like, what are you guys doing? Like, when I go for a walk now, like, I don't track my steps. Like, I look at it and I'm like, oh, cool, I did this many that day. Like, doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
When I go for a walk now, it's for very little of it is for actual physical benefit. Like, I'm getting some sun and I'm getting fresh air and all that stuff, but it's mostly to walk the dogs, get a bit of a break, like, you know, get out, actually feel better.
Absolutely.
And I think that actually makes me feel better about doing less than if I'm going, oh shit, I got to duck out for another 20 minutes because I got 2,000 more steps to do.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's so nice to talk about the mental health benefits of exercise, but also, the physical health in terms of just moving your body. Like, for you, maybe you don't need that cardiovascular, stimulus, but I don't know.
Definitely do.
But other people do, and that's also okay, right? It's okay to walk for health benefits. But I think, when it becomes really rigid, then your whole life is structured around that. So I remember I got home because I was working here at City Strength yesterday, and I got home quite late. And by the end of the day, I did 3,000 steps, and I was like, cool, it is what it is, right? Like, I'm not going to now go for a walk in the dark and risk my life just to hit 10,000 steps. it is what it is, and you know, it doesn't matter. It doesn't change anything.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um. So for you, you mentioned just before that going up weight class was something that was really daunting for you.
Yeah.
Can you explain those feelings around? Like, what were you actually fearful of?
I was so scared that I would be less competitive. So I had when I first joined powerlifting, I loved it so much and I still adore it. And so I I did like 6 comps in like, I don't know, less than 12 months, maybe 10
Oh,
months,
really?
something stupid.
Wow.
I really just I just kept competing, and it was back in the PA days, but I'd gone to I'd done a bunch of local comps, and then I'd gone to worlds in and then I did nationals, and then I went to worlds in Canada. And I had to obviously stay in the under 48s back then. And I'm also the shortest person you'll ever meet. Thank you for filming my feet not touching the floor earlier, Alex.
Just for everyone who's listening on the audio, Val's feet didn't actually touch the ground from sitting on the couch. So she's sitting cross-legged on the couch.
I'm doing my best. And people kept saying to me like, oh, like, and I think it's still a thing that people say where they'll say, oh, weight classes are just height classes. And if that's the case, I should be in the smallest weight class. And I was like, if I'm the shortest person at this comp, I need to be the smallest person at this comp, which is fucked up. And I just thought there's no way I can be competitive unless I stay in the under 48s forever. And because I had, a little bit of success in the under 48s, I thought that was like what I had to do. And what happened was I post worlds when I should have, I ticked that box. I should have gone back up to where I started powerlifting, which is around, 51 and a half ish. I should have gone back up, but then I signed up for a team champs, which no regrets because that was an amazing comp.
That was great. I remember that one.
Yeah, it was so good. But I stayed in the under 48s for that as well. And then I think I did the next one at that one. And what ended up happening was I rebounded so hard in terms of weight. I went way past what I was. And it was really scary because, like you said, it takes time to become more competitive in that higher weight class. And for a period of time, I was a lot less competitive than what I was in the under 48s. And my total didn't, reflect that. My IPF points or Wilks points didn't reflect that. But over time, my body has naturally moved to the weight where I am healthiest at and I'm strongest at. And it's probably still going to continue to change. And I'm totally okay with that.
I think there's a couple of things to talk about to sort of further discussion from what you said. The first thing about height classes, weight classes being height classes in disguise, that's something that I do believe in from a competitive standpoint, but particularly with people who are too tall, who are holding their weight back for those reasons that you mentioned. A, being competitive now, or B, because they're happier, being leaner or whatever. But I also think that there's this idea that whatever weight class you become the most competitive in, that's going to be the one that you're happiest in. And I don't agree with that either, because I think that the pinnacle of performance is often unhealthy. Whether it be being, fatter than you want or leaner than you want and, starving yourself to get down there. And I saw a post recently, I can't remember who it was by, so I can't give credit, but it was saying the weight class that you end up the most competitive in may not be the weight class where you are the happiest in life.
Ooh.
And I actually agree with that because I think that there are instances, in a sport like powerlifting where we're really pushing ourselves really, really hard. We're probably going to do things that don't align with our social health as much as we want. We're probably going to do things that, force us to sacrifice stuff in our life in order to reach that pinnacle. And I think that's an important point to make as well. It's if you truly want to get to the top, the top, you might have to actually sacrifice some of these things that we're highlighting that are really important.
Absolutely. But it goes back to, is the trade-off worth it for you, right? Is it, if I get to IPF Worlds, is that enough for me, right? And what are the next steps? And I think I often say we're looking so short term, we need to zoom out and look long term, because everyone will just cut for a comp because yes, you're more competitive 2-3 kilos lighter, but what does that mean down the track? And are you going to aggressively bulk back up and then come back down? Is is that actually going to make you more competitive, and is that going to make you healthy and happy? You know?
Yeah, I think a lot of people will say, or they'll want to say, because there's that pressure there to be the best.
Yeah.
They will say that getting to that level is enough,
Mm.
but then they'll only be willing to do that in a very short time. And those behaviors actually tell them that, hey, this isn't enough for me to sacrifice those things.
Mm.
And I think we need to also get back to, I say this all the time, but we need to get back to the roots of why we started lifting in the first place.
Absolutely.
And why we started powerlifting in the first place.
Mm.
Usually people start lifting for vanity's sake or for stress relief like yourself. And then they veer into lifting heavy because it's away from that.
Yeah.
And, you know, the reason they like lifting heavy is because it makes them bigger, it makes them stronger, it makes them feel better.
Yeah.
And then when you get deeply immersed into it, you then reverse this behavior and you end up doing things that run contrary to it.
Yeah.
Like deliberately shrinking yourself or, you know, putting yourself in a weight class where you aren't stronger or putting yourself in a weight class where you aren't actually growing and facilitating, you know, further progress.
Absolutely. I agree. And I think sometimes, and excuse my language, sometimes you have to fuck around to find out. Like sometimes, like I can say this in hindsight. I can say in hindsight and you can say in hindsight, okay, staying in that smaller weight class wasn't good for me. I shouldn't have stayed as long, right? And we can tell our athletes this and we can kind of use it as an example. But sometimes you kind of they'll go through it and they'll do that last comp and they're like, oh man, I cannot do another deficit, not again, right? And then you're like, great, it is definitely time to move up a weight class.
Yeah.
This is something that we've already talked about 4 or 5 times, and if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's do this.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think part of it is like, yes, we've got this knowledge and this experience, but I think the client comes in with knowledge, experiences, and beliefs as well. And sometimes it's not our job to change their mind. It's for us to help them come to, you know, the life and the realization that they want.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I can speak on that myself. When I first hired a coach, I was 84 kilo body weight.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't happy with how I looked. Like that was the heaviest I'd ever been at that point. This is back in 2014. And I was like, said to my coach at the time, I was like, I'd like to do a bit of a diet, get myself down a little bit, you know, just a short-term thing.
Yeah.
And then I got about 6 weeks into the diet and I got below 80.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, the 74 weight class isn't too far.
Oh, it's a dangerous game to
and
play.
And then I said to him, you know what, like I'll just keep going because I feel good. I'm eating enough food, whatever. I'll just keep going. But there's a big difference between 79.5 and 74.0.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, he told me at the time, I don't recommend this. And I did it anyway.
Yep.
And the cut was horrible.
I can imagine.
I was like spitting into a cup for about an hour and a half. I was, I think, 800 grams overweight the morning of the comp on my home scales.
Gosh.
Spat into a cup for like 45 minutes before I left home. I was down to 74.1 when I left home. Yeah. And then I got to the comp and jumped on the comp scales and I was 74.6. And I just kept going, kept spitting. I made it, competed. I actually did okay.
Yeah.
And it was a lesson to me like, okay, I can fit in this weight class for now, but I need to be smarter about my cutting strategy. And then the second comp went like, the cut was really easy. And then my performance was great.
Yeah.
And I think that gave me like a bit of a false sense of security for like, okay, I can actually stay in this weight class longer. Yeah. And this whole time my coach is saying, go up. Go up. I went to nationals and then I went to international comp. And then the last comp I did as a 74, my performance was terrible. My cut was hard. I was just too big at that point.
Yeah.
I think in the training lead up, I squatted 205 for a triple. And then that's all I did in the comp. Because my cut was so rough, I was probably like 5 kilos heavier than I need to be at that point. Absolutely. And although my coach had told me for over a year, this is stupid, you're making the wrong decision, you need to go up. Yeah. I needed to actually experience that myself to then realize, okay, he's actually right. Yeah. Now I'm going to go up. I know that was such a long story, but that's like so important. And I think a lot of clients have the same experience where, You can tell them and you can give them all the tools,
Yeah.
but it doesn't mean anything to them until they actually feel it.
Absolutely.
They all think like, no, I'll be able to manage the cart. I'll perform fine. Like I'm different to everyone else. I'm built different.
Yeah, I'm built different, and we all have like different like we all feel like we have a certain level of health literacy, right? Like for me, in a similar sense to you, like when I was staying in the under 48s, like my squats kept plateauing, and my totals were like slightly better, but really just not moving at the rate that they could have moved at, which I didn't know. And then as soon as I moved up a weight class, PB'd my squat by like 5 kilos every comp, right? And you don't know what you don't know, but you kind of sometimes have to get to that point where you're like, oh, this isn't the right choice anymore.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I had a similar experience with squats as well. My second comp at 74 squatted 210, which is
Yeah.
pretty good, and then it was 200, 200, 205.
Yeah. Mm.
And just a whole bunch of really disappointing performances that didn't reflect training
Yeah.
because the cuts were so aggressive and so exhausting, so stressful. Like I'd get to the platform and I'm like, I don't have anything left. Like I don't feel anything like I did when I was training.
Yeah, but your experience was so like it was so obvious. Does that make sense? Like not everyone's experience will be that obvious. Like for me, um, getting down to under 48 was not that hard in the sense that like I didn't have to do anything aggressive. But by the time I got to deads, I was gassed. And I was continually gassed for every single comp. And I'm not one of those people that like get so nervous they can't eat on comp day. Like my stomach is a bottomless pit on comp day. I can eat 3,000 calories.
Except for the reflux.
Except for the reflux. But that was an issue. But pretty much like it wasn't because I wasn't fueled in that short time frame and I wasn't rehydrating fast enough. It was simply like I'd spent so long in a deficit in the lead up and I was sitting at a body weight that was lighter than what I should have been at, and I just didn't have that endurance and that ability to get to deads. So it doesn't have to be spitting in a cup and having that really horrible approach. Horrible experience before you realize, okay, this is not it for me.
I think you alluded to it there, though. It was like reflective in your actual performances themselves. If you objectively look at the numbers, and if you're relatively new to powerlifting and you are progressing slowly or not progressing at all, and you're at the top of your weight class, probably a good enough indication that you're ready to go up a weight class.
Yeah.
And another issue that I see with people going up a weight class,
Yeah.
and this is so common, is let's just use the male weight class as an example. Someone's an 83 lifter.
Yep.
And they're like 84 and they just kind of just make it.
Yeah.
And, you know, they could probably stay a little bit longer, but they make the decision, or their coach and they make the decision together that it's time for them to move up, and they shoot from 83 all the way to 93. And I think people use these weight classes as like, because it's called the 83 kilo class and the 93 kilo class, people assume that you have to be 83 kilos or 93 kilos.
Absolutely.
It's like you can compete at 87, you can compete at 86.
You can be anywhere you want
And
in that
I think
range.
it's really important when you're going up not to get to the top of the class immediately.
Yes. But in that same token, like you may jump like I did. I jumped from 48 to 51 and a half, like 52. Like I did that huge jump in that beginning. Actually, no, I overshot to 53, 54 actually.
That's probably more reflective of that's where you will blow out to after comp.
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah, but I stayed at that higher weight for a little while, right? But yeah, it's one of those things where there are so many benefits actually being in the middle of a weight class, and people discount that. Like you don't have to worry about making weight in any way, which is amazing. That's so much off your plate, right? Peaking brain is not as intense, right? One time I like opened a car boot into my head and then walked into a wall immediately afterwards because I was cutting so hard and I was peaking so hard for that comp in Melbourne.
I've got a funny story about that. Once I cooked a bunch of rice.
Yeah.
And it was like enough rice for like 3 days or something. And then I went to the fridge to go and get the rice because I needed to have a meal.
Yeah.
And I'd like planned out my food, you know, a couple of weeks out from comp, like you know. And I was like, my rice isn't in the fridge. Like, where did I put my rice?
What?
Turned out I put the rice in the cupboard.
Oh my god.
And it had been like a whole day.
Yeah.
And I couldn't eat the rice,
Yeah, that's
obviously,
rough.
because it was spoiled.
That's a lot of rice to lose.
Chrissy
extremely
Chrissy
disappointing.
pays me out about that all the time.
As she should. As
Yeah.
she should. And the third point I was going to make was that you can eat before comp, which especially if you're an anxious or a nervous lifter or you get reflux or bloating on comp day, there's less pressure for you to eat post weigh-ins to be fueled. So eating breakfast before comp will make you weigh slightly heavier. I know that. But it may actually be the best thing for your performance. And you don't always necessarily get that opportunity when you are at the top of your weight class.
And something that I do with a lot of my lifters who are slightly above their weight class is I'll actually get them to do some sort of like a low residue gut food cut type
I
of
do
deal
the same thing and then make them eat breakfast.
and get them actually below. So
Yeah.
like my lifter Richie, he competed recently
Mm.
and he was training, 93.5 to 94, like only just over.
Yeah.
We could have almost done nothing. We could have just been like skip dinner and you'll be fine.
No, you shouldn't have done that, but
But
okay.
we just cut his veggies out for 3 days.
Yeah.
And he was 91.8 or something morning of comp.
Mm.
Huge breakfast, like couple Gatorades, like
Yeah.
turn up to weigh in, like fully fueled and ready to go.
Yeah.
And he did great.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I'm glad that worked out really well. But yeah, I do a similar thing, not in the same way, but yeah, you can manipulate weight acutely without water loading or doing a sauna, right? Something that's going to more drastically affect performance for some people. And you can still manipulate weight and be able to make that work to your advantage, right? You don't have to be like, it's all or nothing. Either I manipulate my weight or I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay. So let's just get back to body image and then wrap this thing up.
Okay.
What were some of the ways that you actually improved your body image and the way that you see yourself? Or is that something that you still struggle with?
No, I actually really love my body.
That's great. But how did you get to that place?
Yeah. Okay. So can I start from the beginning?
Of course.
So when I was going
You're the guest.
when I was going through it all, it was a rough time. But one of my best friends, she is a ED nurse, like she's a mental health nurse who works with patients with eating disorders. And at the time she was working with teens, and I had been recovered for a really long time. And she was like to me, Val, what helped you? Like, what helped you recover? And I was like, it's going to sound like the dumbest thing, but I said to her, I'm scared that if I don't recover, I'll lose my intelligence and my kindness. And sorry.
What intelligence?
I know. Yeah, I was like, and I think often we push people to recover for other people. Do it for your family, do it for your friends, and that's amazing. But if that worked, that would have worked by now, right? And there has to be, you have to pursue recovery for you at some point, right? And like what I was feeling was very real, because what happens when you are restricting for a really long time is that your brain literally shrinks. Like the structure of your brain changes, you lose gray matter, and it can be permanent, right? And I was a different person when I was dieting to who I am now and to who I was before, right? And I had less brain space, so I was less kind, I was less generous, I had less capacity for the things I loved and for the people I loved. And so pursuing recovery for me meant finding my way back to who I truly am. And so for when I'm talking to my clients about food freedom, even if they're not at that point of like, as like having a full-blown eating disorder, even if they're just, at that quasi recovery or, just struggling with food a little bit, it's is what's important to you? What do you value? What are you missing out on just to be a smaller size, right? Is it your personality that you're losing on? Is it your connection and your relationships? What do you truly want? And how can we get you there? And a lot of the time, it's a very emotional conversation, and it's also a conversation where people have to push past the fact that weight gain means that they're less valuable, because that's the fear, right? Yeah.
That's beautiful. I think we'll wrap it up there. One last job for you, Val, is just to tell everyone where they can find you, where they can get in contact if they want some help with their nutrition.
So you can find me at www.thestrengthdietitian.com. That's my website. You can also find me on Instagram at The Strength Dietitian. And yeah, I post mainly about performance nutrition, body image, and food freedom.
Thank you so much for coming on, Val.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, guys.